Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jared Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One role can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to episode 11 of the Queen of Shadows podcast on Roll, Ponder, and Play. I'm Jared Hess, your friendly neighborhood game master, solo player, author, and narrator. In our previous episode, Eilwen rests and recuperates after her duel with Belvan, and makes preparations for the journey through the mountains to the burial chamber Belvan had infiltrated. Her father reminds her that it is a place of death, and is what led to her mother's illness and subsequent demise. On the morrow, Eilwen reveals herself to Mabon and to Frostbridge as the rightful heir to the throne and as owner to the shorn crown. She asks Mabon for his fealty and aid. He agrees, but asks in return that she bring him back a wee lion cub from the southlands. Eilwen, Cadfael, and Aron travel the rest of the day, and as evening falls, they arrive at the burial site and make entrance under windy conditions. They find a covered hole in the burial chamber floor, and there discover a hidden sublevel, which Belvan must have explored earlier. They descend into its depths and find a room with a fallen statue with writings that Eilwen cannot read. They are ambushed by a swarm of blind, maggot-white and wrinkled, ravenous cavern crawlers about the size of rats. They flee from the room and rush deeper into the sublevel, down some steps, into another room, with 8 coffins jutting out from each of the walls of the octagonal chamber. But each coffin seems to have been disturbed, each lid has been removed, and the bones are missing from each. And oddly, they can see no prints in the dust other than their own. After finding a branching corridor and getting past a poisoned spear trap, Eilwen manages to unlock a heavy stone door, and they move into the final room in the sublevel. It's a circular room with an iron pedestal in the center, and 8 skeletons are lying face down as if making obeisance to a short and stout octagonal stand made of black iron. Atop the pedestal, Eilwen sees a notched octagonal inset groove that could only have held a heavy octagonal ring, a ring that is obviously missing. When realization crashes upon her that Belvan must have taken the ring, and that it is likely the source of some fell power, she fears that Frostbridge is in grave danger and urges them to race back to the surface. Upon doing so, they find that night has fully fallen, and a blinding blizzard has hemmed in their way, forcing them to spend the night in the upper chamber. Eilwen chafes at the delay, but can do little more than groan in frustration as she fears the worst. As we begin this episode, Eilwen's stats are Edge 2, Heart 1, Iron 1, Shadow 3, Wits 2. Current assets: Archer, initial box; Cutthroat, initial box; Shadow Walk, initial box. Current statuses: Supply 4 out of 5, Spirit 5 out of 5, Health 3 out of 5, Momentum 3 out of 10. Current debilities: none. Current unspent XP 2. And now, on to episode 11 of Queen of Shadows. The next day, they made the laborious journey as quickly as they could, through freshly fallen snow across the valley of two peaks to return to Frostbridge. About midday, across a mottled blue and gray sky, they saw plumes of dark smoke billowing over the ridge ahead. "No," Eilwen breathed. "Hurry!" she shouted to the others, and with a groan, she surged through the snow on the trail. Then she was at the ice bridge and among more firmly packed snow. And in the distance, where their circle Frostbridge lay sheltered in its alcove, she saw several homes had made themselves feasts to frenzied flames. She broke into a careful jog across the ice bridge, her legs burning from their quick morning march. Across the bridge, among the long houses of Frostbridge, she saw bodies lay broken in the snow, torsos torn with terrible clawed fingers, throats slashed asunder. Drops of crimson marred the pristine snow. They heard crying, screaming, and the sounds of battle. "This way," Eilwen called back to the others, and as they rounded a corner, they saw Mabon down a street. He was alive. His back to the side of a longhouse, he held a bloody two-handed battle axe. And though blood smeared one shoulder, he seemed hale. Eilwen breathed a sigh of relief. They had made it. Two warriors stood beside Mabon, engaging something she couldn't see, blocked from view by a longhouse. Another longhouse to Mabon's right, and closer to Eilwen, raged in orange flames, coughing up black smoke to the heedless heavens. Eilwen moved a few feet towards Mabon, and his guards an arrow set to her bowstring, aiming for a shot. Smoke and cinders drifted across her view, as she struggled to see what foe threatened Mabon. She heard a crunching sound and saw a warrior careen headfirst into the side of a log wall, near Frostbridge's chieftain. The warrior lay twitching in the snow, his neck broken. Then he went still. Her heart hammered for haste, and she aimed her bow, but still nothing. Another warrior was knocked to the ground in front of Mabon. Mabon gave a defiant roar at whatever he faced. Then Eilwen saw a large, muscular man stride into view. It was Gwili, the blacksmith. He bore no weapon, save his thick arms and sizable fists. Eilwen remembered last summer he had taught her how to work the forge, and how to shoe mounts. The man had hulking arms and a thick neck like a bull's. His foot smashed down at the fallen warrior who lay in the snowy street by Mabon, shattering his ribs. Then Gwili kicked the wounded man, the blow lifting him off the ground and sending him spinning into the wall by Mabon, cracking timbers and bones, to lie dazed and broken beside the form of his fallen companion. It was Gwili, but Eilwen knew it was also not Gwili. For any semblance to humanity on the friendly blacksmith's face was long gone, replaced now with a feral snarl that turned to a rictus grin. How it joyed in this wanton violence. Hadn't Gwili been one of those who had been on Belvan's burial detail? Did he have the ring then? Then Gwili... No, this thing was not Gwili, she told herself. Strode towards Mabon, its mouth opened wide in a hideous grin, with teeth and chin besmirched and smeared in unsatiated appetite. Its fists clenched, muscles bulging. She loosed her bowstring, yet a heartbeat before she let fly. The conflagrated home collapsed into the street, spilling flaming logs and crimson embers and smoke in a billowing rush that marred her shot and sent her shaft wide, to thud into a post by the thing's head. She cursed and reached for another arrow. Through the sheets of smoke and embered sparks that skated across the snow, she heard Mabon give a great roar and saw him surge forward, slamming his two-handed axe into the creature's shoulder, shattering its bones and rendering one arm useless. But the shade-fueled mountain of flesh didn't seem to feel any pain. It grabbed Mabon's shirt with his good arm in a meaty fist, lifted him off the ground, pulled him close, and in a sudden yank, headbutted him, Mabon swooned as his nose exploded, and the skin on his forehead split open, blood oozing out from the rent skin. The thing lifted Mabon higher. "No!" Eilwen shouted, and resumed running towards him, raising her bow and knocking another arrow. But she was too late. Gwili, or whatever was left of Gwili after the foul shades had entered his mortal shell, threw Mabon with a terrible force into a totem by the longhouse. The carved tree-like pole snapped into two in a shower of wooden splinters, and the pole's top fell over, crushing Mabon beneath. Mabon emitted a groan, blood oozing into the snow from nose and cracked skull. One hand clawed at the snow as if reaching for something it could not hold, like holding on to the fading winter light of life in the midst of a raging snowstorm. Then he went still. "Mabon," she breathed. Was he dead? She didn't know. He was large and strong as a mule. Surely he couldn't be dead. But he wasn't moving. Okay, here's what I rolled up before the start of this scene. Is all well? 50-50 chance? No. Are people dead? Likely. The oracle gives a yes and. Is Mabon okay? 50-50 chance? No. Is he dead? Somewhat unlikely, I think. The oracle disagrees and says, yes, he is dead. Are a lot of people still left alive in the settlement? Likely? Yes. Is a possessed one here? 50-50 chance? Yes, and he's still on the rampage. The possessed blacksmith turned to engage another warrior who was turning to run. Go, Eilwen commanded her brother and father. Help Mabon. Then she crouched in stealth behind the side of a longhouse and sighted an arrow. Aron and her father moved towards Gwili, their weapons at the ready. She aimed and let fly. Okay, this is the enter the fray move. I'll say because the creature they're fighting has been wounded by Mabon and his guards. It's a dangerous only encounter, no longer formidable. She is entering the fray with Shadow, since it's not aware of her yet. So I rolled a 4 on the action dice, plus 3 from her Shadow is a 7, against a 9 and another 9 on the challenge dice. That is a miss, and with the double 9s, it's a negative match. That's not good. The arrow missed by only a foot, but instead of hitting the creature, it hit the lower back of the warrior who had turned to flee from the dark creature's wrath. He screamed and went down in a flash of red. Eilwen cursed and ducked behind her cover. Peeking through some slats, she saw a look of keen intelligence flash across the creature's grinning, blood-smeared mouth. Its eyes showed only their whites. Its body was covered in many cuts, and blood seeped from a dozen wounds. With its mouth agape and one hand extended in a claw-like fashion, the one arm crushed and useless, it rushed towards her father and Aron. Eilwen, one street away, darted behind another building, and cat-like leaped and clambered atop a longhouse in 2 bounds. Then, keeping her feet on the timbered frames, she shot at the creature from a concealed position. This is face danger again with Shadow to shoot it from behind to stop it from engaging her family. She gets a 6 on the action dice, plus 3 from Shadow against a 3 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. Very welcome. And I take plus 1 momentum. That brings her up to 6 out of 10 momentum now. Her barb flew true and took it in the hamstring. It tripped, rolled, and started to clamber to its feet again as Aron and her father rushed past it towards Mabon. She ducked back down again, and when it started to follow her family, she rose from her position and shot it again, shouting as she did so to get its attention, hoping to draw it towards her. She has initiative now from her previous strong hit, so rolling plus edge on a strike move. I get a 4 on the action dice, plus 2 for the edge is a 6 against a 1 and a 3 on the challenge dice for another strong hit. She will give it extra harm, so plus 3 harm brings the total progress to 6 out of 10 boxes. Her shaft took it in its chest, and it stumbled back a few paces, but still it came on. Eilwen lined up yet another shaft, released, as it flashed through the air. This is another strike move. 2 on the action dice, plus 2 for edge is 4, against a 8 and a 5 on the challenge dice for a miss. But I do want to give it damage, so I'm going to burn her momentum to 0 out that 5, turning it into a weak hit instead. This resets her momentum to 2 out of 10, but it takes 2 more harm, giving it 10 out of 10 total boxes, filling up those progress boxes, but we cannot end the fight yet because she did lose the initiative. Her arrow hit, but as it did, the thing launched itself at the side of the longhouse she stood atop, and it started climbing it like an oversized monkey. She stumbled and dropped her bow, windmilling her arms to keep her balance. It climbed up, hissing and crooning as blood dribbled from its mouth. "Taste, must taste," was all it said as it advanced on her, its claw-like hand raking the air. She is going to use the Turn the Tide move. Once per fight, when you risk it all, you may steal initiative from your foe to make a move, not a progress move. When you do, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. If you fail to score a hit on that move, you must suffer a dire outcome, pay the price. She grabbed his arm, twisted and spun in a leg sweep. She tripped it and it fell hard on the roof. The timbers creaked. And I rolled a 1 on the action dice. +1 for iron, which is 2 against a 1 and a 4 on the challenge dice for at least a weak hit, so that's good. She does harm, but that doesn't really matter because it's already at max boxes. She just needs a strong hit to get in a good position to end the fight. The roof creaked and moaned, swayed to the left, and then the entire roof fell inwards. She leaped off and tried to roll with the fall. Okay, this is face danger with edge. She rolls a 6 on the action dice, plus 2 for her edge for an 8 against a 3 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. She'll lose 1 momentum, going down to 1 out of 10 momentum now. The thing burst through the wall, splinters falling off of it as it leaped over debris and half-dashed, half-limped towards her. From the corner of her eye, she saw Aron and her father check Mabon. Then Aron turned, saw Eilwen, and blanched and roared a battle cry, charging after the monster. Eilwen yanked her sword free from its scabbard as it leaped at her, and she tried to duck out of the way. Okay, this is face danger. She rolls a 5 on the action dice, plus 2 for edge, for a 7 against a 6 and 8 on the challenge dice for another weak hit. She mostly dodged it, but its shoulder clipped her. She rolled and came up to her feet, staggering and shaken, her sword in both hands. She'll take the 1 harm and then do an endure harm move. She rolls a 4 on the action dice, plus 4 for her health for an 8, against a 3 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a strong hit with a positive twist. She embraces the pain and gets +1 momentum. That brings her momentum to 2 out of 10. And most importantly, she regains initiative and can now do the end of the fight move. With a defiant shout, she came at its side, blade whistling in the snow-laced wind. Okay, this is the end the fight move. When you make a move to take decisive action and to score a strong hit, you may resolve the outcome of this fight. If you do, roll the challenge dice and compare your progress. Momentum is ignored on this roll. So I have rolled a 2 and a 9 on the challenge dice compared against the 10 progress. 10 beats both of those, so that is a strong hit. On a strong hit, this foe is no longer in the fight. They are killed out of action. Flee or surrender as appropriate to the situation and your intent. Ask the oracle if unsure. It hissed and fell back under her keen onslaught. She slashed across its face, taking off its jaw, then bashed the blade down upon its skull in a spray of bone and blood. It went down on one knee. She kicked it in the face and yanked her blade free, and it fell back. Still it continued to rise. With a massive two-handed thrust, she pierced its ribcage, pinning it to the ground. 3 feet of cold iron pierced its heart and drove into the stone-cold earth. The creature gave one last heave, rising up on the blade. Then it gave a final shudder and lay still. As with Belvan's death, an inky shadow rose from the body. It seemed to give a wordless shriek before the cold mountain wind, as before, withered it to wisps of nothing. Silence reigned, and people peeked out of windows or from behind doors. Eilwen looked down at the cooling corpse and saw the octagonal ring on Gwilly's finger. She worked it free with her dagger without letting it touch her skin. Then, the ring still held on her blade, she carried it carefully to the blacksmith's home. Gwilly's apprentice, Rovat, jogged after her. A crowd slowly began to form and follow. "Eilwen?" he asked as she approached his shop. He was a short and stocky journeyman apprentice in his mid-20s, with a beard like a halo around his chin, and bald atop his head save for a stubble of blonde hair. His blue eyes studied her face. "I need your furnace," she said to him. "Quick, make it hot enough to melt this down to slag, and bring me salt." Rovat ran to obey. When he had done so, and the rush of air inside the shop had flared the fire white hot, she slid the ring off the dagger's blade into an earthen cup. It fell heavily. Then, with his tongs, she placed the cup in the furnace. Rovat pushed the bellows, his strong arms bulging under his shirt. The metal began to smoke, and after a few minutes, it melted to liquid. She removed the earthen cup and poured some salt and some half-frozen dirt into it. The mixture hissed and popped within the cup. She then poured it out onto the anvil and hammered the mixture flat. It cooled slightly to a solid, yet still glowing state. Surviving settlers gathered around her, both somber and curious. She picked up the still glowing slag with the tongs, and with resolute steps strode to the ice bridge, and then to the edge of the chasm. Then she cast the vile thing down into the yawning deep. It disappeared, glowing like a fiery sunset, steam trailing after it into the blue and black foggy depths below. "The evil that has visited our home is now gone," Eilwen shouted. She heard weeping, and the wails of women mourning lost children, lost husbands, and men mourning lost wives and sons. Sisters and brothers crying out in pain because death had stalked among them so freely. "But its cost was great," her father said in a low voice behind her. "Mabon is dead, as is half of Frostbridge. This is indeed a dark day." Mabon was dead. The truth hit her like a punch in the gut. What of her vow? The night-damned storm last night had delayed them. She should have been here. She could have stopped the creature before it was too late. Could have... She turned and wanted to shout to the moaning wind, to the deaf or dead gods who had forsaken them. Mabon had promised to support her just a couple of days ago, and now all she had was a settlement she grew up in who didn't believe in her. They appreciated her and knew her. Some even cared about and loved her, but without Mabon's commands and his support, who would lead this settlement? Voices called out from the settlers, echoing her thoughts. "What of Mabon?" someone called out. "Who will lead us now?"
"Without a chief, without order, the settlement is doomed. With evil walking the snows, is it even worth staying here?" Her gaze settled on her father. "What?" he asked. She turned to him. "You must lead them, father." "What?" he asked again, clearly alarmed now. "You are respected and sensible. You are different from Mabon, but you must lead them now." "Daughter, I am no leader. Will you lead us, daughter of Cadfael?" someone else called out. "You said you were our queen. We've seen a broken crown, but many know that you're just a young girl." "Do it, father," Aron nodded. "Do it for Eilwen, for your queen." Okay, does Cadfael see the sense in this? I think it's somewhat likely. I rolled a 4 on the oracle. That is a no, but... No, he doesn't see the sense, but he'll do it. "I think you have the wrong person," father said. "But I'll do it. May our ancestors preserve us," he muttered. Aron grinned and clapped father on the shoulder. "He'll do fine. Just give them all plenty of ale and good hunting. What could go wrong?" "Go soak your head in the snow," Cadfael cuffed him lightly on the head. "I'm surrounded by idiots." Aron grinned and nodded, but sobered when his eyes moved again across the fallen and saw the weeping families. Their father followed and straightened his tunic and coat, and then nodded to Eilwen. "I cannot be your leader." Eilwen turned back to the crowd. "I have things I must be about. But I have asked Cadfael to be chieftain of Frostbridge, and he has agreed. Know that he stood against the evil creature in bravery this day. He risked his life and limb to try and save Mabon. When others ran away from the creature, he ran towards it. This is the man you need. He should be your chieftain." The crowd nodded, and more cheers were heard. "He also knows of the threats from the Wolf Fang clan, and he is sensible and fair, and he hunts well. Does anyone dispute this choice? Is there another who desires to lead?" Her voice rang out in the cold. No one did. In fact, they shied away from the question, even those who had once doubted Mabon's leadership. After witnessing the fate of Belvan and Mabon and their own settlement, many looked about as if fearing she'd choose one of them to lead. "Then he is your chief, and his word is law," she shouted to the crowd. "You know the traditions of our people. Should any dispute his claim later, you must face him or me, his chosen sword mistress of Frostbridge, in the dueling circle." The people nodded their assent, and they shouted, "We accept Cadfael. Aye, he is chief." "I didn't say you would be sword mistress," her father muttered under his breath, as some in the crowd cheered him. Others were too stunned from the attack to do more than just nod or look on in silence. "I knew you wouldn't," she responded in kind. "But it's better this way. The memory of Belvan's fate is still fresh. None will dare to dispute your leadership for years to come." She stepped down from a flat boulder, and Cadfael stepped up. "People of Frostbridge, bury your dead. This is a time to mourn the fallen, not a time to celebrate and feast. But when the dead are laid to rest, when we have cried our tears of warm ice to the lost gods, when the memories of these dear ones are written upon the flesh of our hearts, then we will feast to their memory." Okay, she has completed her vow. So we do the fulfill your vow move. This is a progress move. When you achieve what you believe to be the fulfillment of your vow, roll the challenge dice and compare to your progress. Momentum is ignored on this roll. Let's see what she rolls. First of all, let's find out how many boxes she has on this for destroying the foul item and the other things she's done. She has 9 progress on this troublesome vow, so 3 boxes for delving the depths, 3 boxes for defeating the creatures. So that's a total of 9 boxes against a 10 on the challenge dice and a 4 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. On a weak hit, there is more to be done, or you realize the truth of your quest, envision what you discover, ask the oracle if unsure, then mark experience. Troublesome, dangerous, formidable, extreme, epic. So she gets plus 1 XP to add for the 2 from the last vow. And so she actually has a 3 of total experience to spend. That's enough for a new asset. And since she was in a duel, I'm going to give her the duelist asset. And it says if you wield a bladed weapon in each hand, when you strike or clash, you may add a plus 2. If you do, decide before rolling. Inflict plus 1 harm on a strong hit and count a weak hit as a miss. So I wanted to give this to her because a sword is a pretty big deal, and she has a sword, but her iron is really bad. She only has a 1 in iron, and that's what's used for striking and clashing within melee. So this could help offset some of those downsides, although turning a weak hit into a miss is not going to be very pleasant either. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, did Dristan and Kiffin survive? I think that's likely since Dristan didn't really live in the middle of the settlement. He was kind of on the outskirts, and Kiffin was with him. So that is a yes, and they didn't even know about it until they came to town that night, having seen the smoke on the horizon. That night, as one, Frostbridge had buried the fallen in the ground near the burning buildings, where the soil was softer. Everyone had toiled for hours, digging out the half-frozen ground, wrapping bodies in cloth or skins and laying them in the cold and silent earth. Eilwen had helped as well, and her arms burned from the exertion. But it felt right to help lay the fallen to rest. Now, back in their longhouse, beneath the skins of her bedding, she thought about the recent events, the burial chambers under the mountain, the strange iron ring, the skeletons, Belvan and Gwili, Mabon's death, her father safely in charge of Frostbridge now. It hadn't turned out the way she had thought it would. Perhaps events never took such straight arrow courses. But Frostbridge was in good hands. It is done, and soon I head south, she whispered into the dark. She turned over, pulled the skins close about her shoulders, and sighed in slumbrous need, and thankfully, weariness claimed her quickly.
Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can also find transcripts, show notes, and other projects I'm involved in. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on Patreon or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.